Tonight on What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update, Home Insights, and Target Ambition, we're talking again about personal finances. This is part 2 of a 3-part series we're doing this week, and today we will cover how to understand the pitfalls of debt. And let me remind you that even if you don't think you have enough money to worry about personal finances, that in fact not having enough money is a good reason to watch this show and series, because understanding personal finance and money management is the first step to changing your life. If you do have enough, then managing is a way to keep and grow what you've got. In either case, how to stay away from bad debt and managing your good debt are things everyone needs to know. Want to find out more? Then stay tuned. Hey guys, I really enjoy making these videos for you, so if you get value from them or know someone who would, please support us by hitting like, subscribe, leaving comments, and sharing.
What the Heck Do I Know presents PM Update with Leah and Mia. And now your host, Leah.
Welcome back to PM Update. I'm Leah. In Home Insights, we cover topics on using project management skills and processes at home. In tonight's segment, we're talking about debt and how to understand your personal finances. Now, most people can't afford to buy a home outright, so debt is necessary for most of us that want to own our own home. In Target Ambition, where we show situations where you can use project management skills to set and stay on track for goals, we show how some people manage to get out of it. Debt has both positive and negative effects on your life, so understanding how to make smart choices about what to spend on and how the experts decide when debt is granted is going to put you in a better position throughout your life journey. Mia has 2 stories for us tonight to illustrate these points. Mia, what are the debt stories for tonight? In tonight's Home Insight story, we will hear from Mark and Mary Macbeth. Mary recently lost her job due to downsizing, and they're getting a crash course in how to budget on one income. They're particularly concerned about how to keep current on their mortgage and credit card payments. In Target Ambition, I will introduce you to Harper Hamilton, who received a rude awakening when trying to buy a car and learned some tough lessons about debt and how she was living her life. These sound like stories with a lot of useful information, Mia. I can't wait to hear them. And thanks for bringing those to our viewers. Debt is any money borrowed from one party from another. The most common forms of debt are loans, such as car, personal, student, mortgages, and credit card debt. It is just one of those things that makes it hard for us to live without at some point. But the goal is always to get out of it if and when you can. Now, for our first quote question of the day, do you know who said, "Debt certainly isn't always a bad thing. A mortgage can help you afford a home. Student loans can be a necessity in getting a good job. Both investments worth making, and both come with fairly low interest rates?" Mia's stories and the answer to this question when we return, so stay tuned. Mark Macbeth always thought of himself as a thrifty person, but when his wife Mary lost her job and they became a one-income household, things would go from thrifty to sparing. They knew they were going to have to find ways to become even tighter with what cash they had until she found something else. They were also forced to reevaluate this self-perception as they reviewed bills, credit card statements, as a part of trimming the fat from their spending. Mortgage debt is generally considered good debt because it is a long-term purchase of equity, a valuable asset that can be retained for your use or sold for a price higher than you purchased it for. Now, after 2008, we all know this isn't always true, but usually it is. Defaulting on a mortgage can turn what is generally considered good debt very, very bad. If you default on a credit card, it will hurt your credit rating, but not to the extent a default on a mortgage will. Credit card debt that is carried from month to month is always considered bad debt because in general, it indicates an inability to afford whatever you're purchasing on it if you aren't paying it off at the end of the month. Mark and Mary were understandably worried after Mary lost her job. Her prospects during COVID were not good at finding anything in a short period of time. They were 5 years into a mortgage on a large house. They thought of themselves as fairly thrifty and price-conscious, but they had to admit after reviewing their statements this was not true. Mary spent her first day of unemployment filing for benefits and making calls to cancel services they can no longer afford. No more gym memberships, no more cable, reducing phone and internet services. Then she updated her resume and did some searching for open positions to apply to. All of that took most of the day, but she still had a couple of hours before Mark was due back home, so she started looking up information on how to live a super frugal lifestyle. When Mark got home, Mary told him about her searches. Mark laughed because he had been looking up the same websites at the office in between meetings. So they discussed various ways they could really cut back and be super frugal. The more they talked about what cuts to make and things they could do to save money, the more they realized that the idea of living debt-free was much more appealing to them than what they were doing before. They both loved the house they bought because it was beautiful, but Mary did not like cleaning such a large home, and Mark was getting tired of all the lawn care. Mark and Mary had enough savings to cover them for 3 to 5 months if both of them were not working, but after considering their situation, they decided not to go through the stress of wondering how they were going to make a mortgage payment for the next 6 to 12 months after that. So they decided to sell one of their cars and put the house on the market and go all in on living debt-free. In the evenings, Mary and Mark would review super frugal, debt-free, and financial independence websites for ideas. Mary spent her mornings the entire next week looking and applying for jobs. In the afternoons, she worked with a real estate agent on what they needed to do to prep their home for sale, and also put together plans for their new super frugal, debt-free life. Mark would start taking a sack lunch to work, and Mary would start cooking in bulk and freezing the extra in individual containers, so they would always have a selection of healthy meals to choose from and reducing waste. They both started working out at home with free YouTube videos, since they canceled their gym memberships that they weren't really using anyway. Mary also set budgets for all of their expense categories based on their new lifestyle, and set up a tracking system so it would be easier to check at the end of the month, or weekly if needed. Every evening they decided at least one new thing to try, and the next day Mary would plan or organize things so they could implement it. They got an offer on their house within 30 days, and since they had not found another suitable, smaller location yet, they decided to rent for 6 months while they found the right place. They sold most of their furniture and excess belongings shortly before closing, and were pleased to find that they would make a small profit on the sale. Once the sale was final, they decided to pay off Mark's car loan and all of the credit cards at once, and then cancel all but one of the accounts each for emergencies. By the time Mark and Mary were getting settled in their temporary apartment, they were pleased to find that not only had they eliminated all of their debt, but now they would be able to start saving again, even though Mary wasn't working. Some of the things they were doing now would not be possible when Mary goes back to work, but for now they're doing just fine, and Mary enjoys staying busy. It keeps her from obsessing about how long it takes for someone to respond to a job application. Mark is thrilled to have his weekends free from mowing and being free from the stress of making mortgage and car loan payments on just his income.
Now, all debt, good and bad, comes at a cost. The obvious cost is the interest you pay to borrow the money. The less obvious cost is that you are literally borrowing from your future. This is why things that are considered good debt are investments in the future. You're borrowing now against a prediction that what you're borrowing for will improve your ability to earn or be an asset in the future. In Mark and Mary's case, it wasn't so much that they thought their mortgage debt was bad, it was just a risk they didn't need. And after only 5 years in the big house, they also knew they didn't want it. Mark and Mary certainly took this lesson in debt to the extreme by going super frugal, but also doing it with a project management process. They were getting ideas, doing research, planning it out, and then executing. Now, debt is always about risk, both for the one lending and the one receiving. A lending institution takes a risk on you whenever they grant you a loan. This is why understanding how they make their decisions is important if you ever want one of them to take a risk on you, and why character is one of the 5 determining factors on granting loans. Some people will be late or not repay loans if it is even slightly inconvenient. Some won't pay it back at all, no matter how much they have. But if a bank or financing company can see from your credit history that you do repay loans, and as agreed to by the terms, your character looks good to them. The loan-to-value ratio is important because lenders also know that you care more about things that you have invested your own money in. If your investment level is too low, it increases their risk. And the debt-to-income ratio, they know the point where people become unable to handle any unexpected expenses that come up. The maximum debt-to-income ratio banks will accept right now is about 43%. If you want to make sure that you're being responsible about your debt, try to make it all good debt and stay in those guideline numbers. Now, do you know who said debt certainly isn't always a bad thing? A mortgage can help you afford a home. Student loans can be a necessity in getting a good job. Both investments worth making, and both come with fairly low interest rates. That was Jean Chatzky, American journalist, personal finance columnist, financial editor of NBC's Today Show, and the founder and CEO of the multimedia company Her Money. In the second half of our show, we have the story of Harper Hamilton, who went car shopping and ended up getting a lesson in financing that inspired her to make some changes. And for our second quote question of the show, do you know who said, "Credit is an I love debt score"? The answer to this question and Mia's final story for the show when we return, so please stick around. Harper Hamilton considers herself an average sort of girl when it comes to her spending habits. She likes to shop as much as her friends, enjoys her morning latte, and has a well-furnished apartment, but nothing too extravagant. She works hard for these things, but also considers herself underpaid for her efforts. When she decided she needed a new car and went for financing, she got a rude awakening and a lesson in lending. Harper had just picked the perfect car. Red and sporty. She was really looking forward to driving around in this one instead of her old Volkswagen. At first, the car salesman was only too happy to get her started on the paperwork for financing and take her old car in for trade. Unfortunately, though, when he came back from the financing department, he told her that they would not be able to grant her a loan. She was welcome to try to find someone else to lend her the money for it, though. Harper couldn't really believe it. She had never been turned down for credit before, and she had her heart set on that pretty red car. She always paid her bills on time, so she had a good credit history. What could possibly be the reason? She decided she was going to find a loan for that car, no matter what the car dealership said. Harper went straight to her bank. She had been with them a while and had a good relationship with them. When she met with Hal, the lending customer service person at her bank, she requested a loan application and explained the situation. Hal said he would see what he could do for her, and after Harper completed the application, he input the data into his system. After a few moments of waiting for the computer to do the analysis and come back with a response, he shook his head and apologized. He would not be able to finance this car for Harper after all. But why not? I have excellent credit history, and you have been my bank for years. How is this possible? Hal explained there are many factors that play into making credit decisions. We think of these as the 5 C's of lending: capacity, capital, conditions, character, and collateral. In your case, the car is the collateral and an asset that depreciates in value. In other words, it becomes worth less the older it is. The value of your old car is not enough to bring the loan-to-value ratio, or LTV, up to an acceptable level. At this bank, we only grant car loans at a maximum LTV of 70%. Since the purchase price and the value of the car is $10,000,
and the trade-in value for your old car is $2,400, you would need a loan for $7,600, which is an LTV of 76%. Harper asked, "So, if I came up with an additional $600 for the down payment on the car, that would bring the LTV ratio to 70%, and then I could get the loan?" "No," said Hal. "There are other reasons I can't agree to this loan. You do have good character, and at this bank especially, we know you to be the kind of person to honor your debts and pay on time. But I also have to take conditions into account. You haven't mentioned a need for a new car, so there's nothing wrong with the one you have. In the current economic climate, many people are losing jobs, and finding new ones isn't easy right now. In other words, conditions are poor. You also did not mention having additional funds for the down payment until I explained the LTV. Do you have $600 available right now?" "No," Harper said. "I was thinking about getting it from my parents." "Okay, so you are not able to save anything additional, which means you are either low on capital or don't have any additional funds from month to month. Do you know why that is?" "Well, I just didn't make any effort to save anything. I didn't really decide to get a new car until yesterday, and I didn't realize I would find my dream car on the first day." "That may be how you see it, but I think the reason you don't have anything saved is because your debt-to-income ratio is 50%. Your gross income is $3,200 per month. Your rent is $1,000 per month. You have 3 credit cards where your minimum payment is $150 each, and a store card for furniture that is also $150 per month. This leaves you very little to pay for utilities, groceries, gas, or any of the other things you need to live. The maximum debt-to-income ratio I can loan to is 40%. Now, you are a good customer and we want to keep you here with us, so please understand that the no I'm telling you now is not just to protect the bank, but to protect you from an unwise purchase. The best piece of advice anyone can give you now is to pay off all the credit card debt you have now before you go car shopping again. Then we will not only be able to tell you yes, but you will know you will be able to repay without running out of funds for the other things you enjoy." After talking with Hal, Harper realized that she wasn't paying enough attention to her personal finances, especially the amount of debt she had. She was definitely heading down the wrong path, and she was actually glad that she went car shopping today, because it was the reality check and life lesson she needed to get it under control.
Harper spent the next week putting together a budget to get her credit cards paid off. Her goal was to get rid of it all in the next 6 months. She set SMART goals using a project management method and will be checking her progress once a week until she is confident that she can stay on track before moving to monthly checks. Now for her, it wasn't so much that she didn't have the money to pay them off before, she just wasn't thinking about where she was spending her money and making minimum payments on the cards. She realized now that if she had kept up that habit, she would likely be paying for that furniture long after it had lived its useful life. And she had nothing to show for most of the things on her credit cards except some nice clothes and accessories. Now that she had her wake-up call, her goal is to fix all of that. I'm glad to hear that, Mia. I hope she knows that when the time is right for her to go car shopping again, she knows there will be another red sporty car waiting for her. Now, Harper is a responsible person, but she was about to step over a line when it came to her debt and risk. She was heading in a direction that if she had kept going, she might not have been able to get out without serious difficulty. Has this ever happened to you, and how did you get out? Let us know in the comments. Many people aren't as fortunate as she was to have someone explain to them how big a risk they're taking when they get to that point. In both of our stories, we learn mostly information about debt. But I want to make it clear that debt isn't just a risk for whoever is loaning you the money. It's also a risk for you. When you take on debt, you're not just getting something now, you're borrowing it, and more with interest from your own future. Make sure when you do take that risk that it pays off, or that you really need it. And I can't end a show about debt without mentioning unsecured or payday loans. These are the absolute worst risk you can take, and it should be a life-related need before taking these. The odds will never be even, let alone in your favor, and doing it once just perpetuates the problem. If you feel you need one, get in and out as quickly as possible and do what you can to never need one again. Now, for the answer to our second quote question for the day, do you know who said, "Credit is an I love debt score"? That was radio show host, author, and businessman Dave Ramsey. That's all for What the Heck Do I Know's PM Update with Leah and Mia, and our Home Insights and Target Ambition segments for this week. Thank you for watching, and see you next time on our next episode of PM Update. Good night. Don't forget to support these videos by hitting like and subscribe. I love seeing comments too.